your mothers have dressed you very peculiarly today. Boys just don't show their legs like that, or little girls. My goodness, you're supposed to have a long skirt on. The first school that you would have gone to was called the Dame School, which was a local housewife, would bring children into her home to teach them the alphabet and their beginning reading. And if you were started in a Dame School, you would probably, your first book doesn't look much like a book at all. It's called a horn book, and why don't we pass this around? And from these very poor facsimiles, it's very hard to tell why it's called a horn book. And I don't have a good sample, unfortunately, but I do have this. Can anybody guess what this is? Anybody? Here, we can pass it around. What do you think that would be? Wax? Well, wax is a little hard. As you feel it, you'll feel it's a little harder than wax. Yeah, wax wouldn't do that, would it? Anybody else have a guess what it might be? Well, remember what was that little tablet thing that we were passing around called? Who remembers what that was called? Some kind of book. What was the name of it? Anybody remember? It was called a horn book. Yes. And that piece is a piece of horn. So where does horn come from? Wood. From wood? No. Anybody else have a guess? Where have you heard of horns before? You have the kind of trumpet horn that you play. And where else do you have horns?
On a cow.
Yeah, on a cow. Well, it turns out if you take a cow horn and you boil it in water, and then it gets soft when you boil in water, and you can cut it. So obviously that doesn't look much like a cow horn now, does it? Well, you can cut it and you can flatten it. And when you flattened it, you had the horn would separate into very thin sheets. Now that is a thick sheet of horn, but you would have very thin sheets of horn that you actually could see through. And the horn book, as they come around, they would put a piece of very thin horn over the horn book to protect the piece of paper. So that's where the name comes from. And then it would be tacked around the edge of the horn book, so you could actually see through it. And if you look at the piece of horn, put your hand up, you can see, even though that's a very thick sheet, you actually can see through that. So if you look at it carefully, what you can see is they started out the same way you start out back in kindergarten or maybe before kindergarten. What did the horn book start with? Who remembers when they looked at it? What did the horn book start with?
A, B, C, D, E, F.
Right. What's that called?
Alphabet.
Right. It started with the alphabet, same thing that you started with. But the actual way they taught reading was very different than the way we are taught reading today. But they did have some things the same. Right after the alphabet, we have the vowels. And what else? What comes after the vowels? You have the alphabet and then the vowels. And what comes after that? Consonants? Yeah, oh, he told you. What are these? They have consonants and vowels. Those are called what? Anybody know? It's probably not real obvious. Those are the syllables that make up our words. So the kids were taught to recognize syllables. You recognize those syllables, you actually memorize those syllables. And then you would read by breaking the word down into syllables. There was no phonics. Did you all learn phonics in schools? How many kids have learned phonics in school? Do they still call it phonics? No. Oh. You learned the sound out the sounds of the letters? Have you learned the sounds of the letters? Yes? So they didn't learn the sounds of the letters. There was no phonics. They didn't learn the sounds of the letters. They learned to memorize the syllables and attempt to read. So it was more like a sight reading than a phonics approach that we have today. And actually, when I went to school, we were taught sight reading, so I had no phonics. So after the horn book, and you would start in the dame school as young as 2.5 years old. And they started teaching reading at that age. They did not teach writing at that age. Well, let me see how many books I have of these. We can share. Okay, why don't you share? Let's see how far we go. Here's a couple. Here's a couple more. Here. Here's another one. Okay. So the next book that you would learn from, if you were in the 17th century, was a primer. The primer was, if you look through this little book, the primer in the 17th century was a religious indoctrination book. So whatever, each various religions had their own primers, and so it was a religious book in nature that they were using to teach the reading from. And if you were in New England, you were part of, in the 17th century, does anybody know what society you were part of in Massachusetts? Anybody know? Have anybody heard of the Puritans? Has anybody heard of the Pilgrims? Yay, okay. The Pilgrims and the Puritans were all Congregationalists that had left the Anglican Church to come to America to practice their own religion the way they wanted to practice religion. And the thing why Massachusetts was a leader in teaching in schooling for the youngsters was because they felt, the Puritans felt, that it was very important that everybody learned to read. Two reasons why it was important. One was the goal was that everybody would be able to read the Bible for themselves. And the second goal was they wanted you to be able to become good citizens, so that when some new law was posted on the town hall, you would be able to go up and read it. So it was very important that everybody learned to read. And in light of that, the Pilgrims came in 1620. The Puritans came and formed the Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1630. And the fact that education was very, very important to them, Harvard College was founded in 1636, just 6 years after they came. And in 1642, they passed the first law, was that parents, all you parents, were responsible for teaching your children to read. And if you were, had apprentices, you were responsible for teaching them to read. And evidently that was not super successful. After all, it was you were in a wilderness, right? And you were trying to carve a living out of this wilderness. So in 1647, they passed a law requiring every town of 50 or more families to start a school. So they came in 1630, and by 1647, they were starting schools. And if you had 100 families, you were supposed to start a grammar school. And the grammar school was to teach Latin and Greek so that you could go on to Harvard College. And Harvard College in the very early days was primarily to teach ministers, because they were concerned that they would not have ministers coming over from England to work with them. So it was a very religious-based society, and these little books were called primers. And this primer, which you have facsimiles of that you've been looking at, is called the New England Primer. It actually wasn't published till the end of the 17th century, but it was published throughout the 18th century. It was one of the most successful books of the period. They estimate that maybe 3 million copies of this book. So did you look through it? How many people looked through it? Were you able to read it? It's very hard to read. But the one thing that made these books unique was, you see the little pictures? Can everybody who has a copy of the book? What happened to you? Oh, you put them all up. Okay. Here, find the pictures. It was these pictures that made the book so popular, because it has these little pictures which are woodcut pictures. So they would cut a block of wood out with the design, and that's how you print it. So books before this time didn't have pictures in them. So to have pictures in them was very important. Though the early editions, it's somewhat ironic, as you remember I said these were religious books. The early pictures they took from the tavern signs that were used. So some people kind of objected to it, and over the years that it was published, they reprinted it with more appropriate pictures. But the early pictures they actually took from tavern signs. So, why doesn't somebody try to read the letter A? Find the letter A with the picture. And who would like to try reading it? No volunteers? Okay, go ahead.
In Adam's fall, we thinned all.
Yeah, we thinned all. Does that make any sense? That's from the story of Adam and Eve. If you're Christian, you're probably familiar with that story. And I'll give you a hint. That's not the letter F. And that's why when we go back and look at these little textbooks, we find it very, very hard to read. Because we read it as it looks like an F to us, doesn't it? Everybody agrees it looks like an F.
I think it's an R.
Is it R? No, it's not an R. Anybody else have a guess? Yeah.
S.
S. Very good. Excellent. It's the letter S. So it should read, in Adam's fall we sinned all. So when we go back, they use this, it's called a long S, and they used it in both the script and the print text. So it makes the print text and the script even harder to read. So it's very hard for us to go back and read this. But would it have been hard for colonial children to read that? What do you think? No, because they learned it, it was just normal for them. Do you have trouble reading your letters? No, you don't have any trouble reading your letters. So it's hard for us now to go back because we didn't learn that letter. But the colonial children didn't have any trouble reading it. So most of you are boys here. And the boys, after they went to the town school and they learned the primer, could go on to the grammar school, or by the early in the 18th century, there were writing schools. Now remember, we're learning to read. Writing and reading were not taught together. You were taught to read first, and then about the age 7, writing instruction could start. And along with writing instruction, sometimes you might get arithmetic instruction. So that was the third thing. And the writing and the arithmetic were considered commercial endeavors. So of course it was deemed not very important for women to learn writing and reading. So the girls, what was important for the girls to learn, do you think? Any ideas? Well, the important skills for the girls were your domestic skills. So knitting and writing and how to run a household were the skills that were important in the 17th century for girls to learn. But the 18th century, we of course know that our country had the revolution, so that was a dramatic change and lots of changes. But there's lots of changes going on throughout society in the 18th century. The societies are becoming much more secular, and that, of course, carried down into the schools. And the big change in the reading, before in the 17th century, you learned the hornbook, the primer, then you would use the Psalter, which is the book of Psalms. You would then use the New Testament, and then the Bible. And by the 1730s, they were introducing a new book into that sequence, which came after the primer. That was called the spelling book. And this is a little older spelling book. This is a spelling book by Noah Webster. And if you just look through that, most of you, I don't know, when I look through it, I find it very intimidating because it's got list after list of words. And even though it was called a spelling book, it was used to teach reading, not spelling. So that was a big change. The spelling books were much more secular in general than the primers were. And society was changing. A big change, more people wanted their children to learn to write. And one of the big changes in writing came about in the 1730s when powdered ink became available. Before that, you had to make your own ink all the time. So you would have powdered ink, and this is a little packet of powder ink that I'll pass around. So it's just like today, right? I mean, we like our modern conveniences. Well, this was a modern convenience of the 18th century, powdered ink. So that all you had to do was add water. You didn't have to go like I have here some walnut ink. You didn't have to go take your walnuts and boil them and do all the good things that you need to make walnut ink. You could just add water and you had powdered ink. So if you read the advertisements, there's a big upsurge in advertisements for paper and ink and quills and all that kind of thing. So you can track this as it rises. Also a big change was that as the society became more secular, they also wanted, the middle class wanted to have all the things that the upper class had. And this was actually one of the causes of the revolution, because we were buying a tremendous amount of things and we didn't want to pay taxes on all those things that we were buying. So there was a big change going about in the society. And also, another change was the outlook on children. Children were not viewed now as, they were now viewed as blank slates, and that we wanted to fill them up with things. And there also a change was we wanted to start doing books for children, for their amusement, not just trying to teach them to be good citizens, just books for their amusement. And anybody ever heard the expression goody two-shoes? No, they don't use that one anymore. Little Miss Goody Two-Shoes was a book that was published, I think, in the 1750s. And it did not have the connotation that it has today. It was one of these increased books that was actually a storybook for children. It was a storybook that was written for children. So there was a big change. And also, girls now had a bigger access to increased education. In 47, Virginia passed a law requiring girls to be taught writing. Massachusetts passed it in, I think, the 1760s sometime. So now girls had a greater access to writing. So, but it would still be the same sequence. You learn to read, then you learn to write. And so we have some projects here for you today. We have some horn books that you can make if you'd like. You could try out writing with a quill pen. You like to try that. And we also have some kind of fun things that were called rebus puzzles, which they still do today. Has anybody done a rebus puzzle? How about a picture puzzle? Picture word puzzle, yeah, that's what they call them in school today. So we have some rebus puzzles, and there's some stacks over there if you want to. And I also have up here some facsimiles of some other books and things. And from the 19th century, there was a big change in writing, which is what this schoolhouse was opened in 1825. And so it was a 19th century schoolhouse. And from the 18th century to the 19th century, again, there was a big change in how you learned to read and write. So we have some 19th century school books in the back there for you to look at. Okay, any questions? This operated from 1825 to, Ralph? 1903. So it was a typical one-room schoolhouse, and probably very similar to what the 18th century schoolhouses would have looked like.
There's a test for you all. You have to sign your name. You have to make sure you can write.
Yes, there was a very high rate of literacy in the 18th century. It was very, very high. But that it's hard to measure, because when you say literacy, do you mean reading or do you mean writing? And more people could read than could write. But even just the writing of who could sign their name, it was very, very high rate. By the Revolution, almost all males could sign their name. So it was very high rate. So you want to try some of our projects? Sound good? Okay. Yeah, they're all outside.
Go ahead with the project. Now get some pictures.
In a horn book?
Let's see. Okay, who wants which hand?
So all you have to do is, can you cut out the two pictures?
That's the way they were when they
Those are colonial scissors, yeah. That's the only pair of colonial scissors I have here.
All right, we're going to get you guys with your quill pen.
So
I almost did that myself.
what it does is it replaces words with pictures. So what's that? Yep. In 1620, the Pilgrims sailed from, and that's actually a flag. You don't know that because it's not in color, but that's the British flag. So sail from England to, you recognize that? That's a map of America, the United States. Sail to America on the, and what did the Pilgrims sail on? A ship. The first winter, we have snowflakes indicating that's winter in America, was hard for the, what are they? The Pilgrims. Nope. But somebody helped them. Who helped them?
Indians.
Yep, that's right. Those are the Indians right there. The Indians taught the Pilgrims to grow, and what do you suppose they taught them to grow? Yep. And catch. Yep. That's a little abstract for me too, but it's supposed to say harvest.
So it's supposed to say
Harvest, yeah. It's what's called a cornucopia. It's an old-time symbol of. You think so? Okay. After the harvest of 1621, the Pilgrims and the
Indians.
Yep. Had a three-day celebration with lots of.
That's a good one. What else do you think?
Yeah. And I don't even know what that is myself. Games. Okay. So that's the story of the first Thanksgiving. Well, this is a really hard one. It's even hard. This was
Okay, so let's cut a piece of string.
I'm done. I'm done. Alright, I'll be the bolster. How's yours?
Now you put
That's
your
why you
string
came.
through the hole.
It's all about the activities.
I want to draw.
Oh, look, you can make all these cool things when he's done. Why don't you go sit over around the corner there? Now, are you ready to have
Might try to stick this in through the top maybe.
Yeah, that one's for you. Oh, you got it. Good job. Oops, this will be a little different. Put it on. Okay, now you just tie a knot. You know how to tie knots? Now maybe Dad can help us out. Why don't we cut off that braid?
Take this side over. Back this
Do you want to do a wooden book?
okay. This one is actually a letter from England to
Don't you
America,
think they
telling
might
them
have
to
used
shape
them
up.
as
try the puzzle?
as well as teaching them reading? What do you think? Is that what you would do with them? Good job. So then you can hang your book from your belt or on your arm.
Thank you. Did you say Dylan? Oh, Rebus. Say thank you.
You're welcome.
Up there. Yeah. Slide you over here, okay?
Yeah, why don't you slide over so somebody else can make a horn book if they want to.
So just put it in there. Nice.
Oh, what else you do? Can you write your name? It's really hard, isn't it?
Melissa's the leader for this.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm sorry. All right, so this is a den. Okay.
Dylan, why don't you come down here and make a board?
Tiger Den 1.
Want to make a horn
Pack
book?
39. Okay.
I know, well, the crayon's not really part of
Are you called the den leader?
They used to copy pages and pages.
Okay.
Couldn't make Xeroxes. Every copy had to be handwritten.
There you go.
We have that for a minute.
Now she
Now
could
look at
go
that. Now
for
we
a
have
printer.
to, what do you have to do? Look at that. You can do like a letter.
You ever see scissors like this? No,
Make one of these letters.
Writing in mirrored writing. Okay.
It's not as fast as the other one.
No. Okay. You could have one of the others if you'd rather.
You try that kind?
I want to try
Ooh, what do you want
Oh,
to
okay.
Would be like a letter inside
Like
the
some
word.
Squares, right?
Yeah. So you have to cut out the two pictures.
How about an
gum on the
exclamation
back
point?
of that.
There you go.
Fantastic.
Whoops. It's a little breezy out here.
Yep, nice and easy. Along the line.
I'm done.
Wow, Patrick, that's a cool picture. Wow.
Ready?
Kind of story you want to tell. I'm sorry, but this is the Rebus table. Go ahead. Karen.
That's right. It sounded bad. I didn't.
I got this whole end of the table over here. Nobody likes me anyway.
Why don't you get your name on it? You know, the...
Their horn book.
No, I mean, let's...